Upright jerker. The upright jerker was an incredible execution device that was briefly used in the United States from the 19th to the early 20th century. It was designed to replace traditional hangings and was an amazing innovation at the time. Unfortunately, it never gained widespread acceptance and fell out of use by the 1930s. Similar to a hanging, it involved placing a cord around the condemned person's neck. However, instead of a trapdoor opening, the condemned was abruptly hoisted into the air using weights and pulleys, aiming to swiftly break the neck and cause death. The warden of Connecticut State Prison was the first to patent one such device, known as an automatic gallows, in 1895. Executions using the upright jerker occurred in various states, notably Connecticut, where notorious criminals like Gerald Chapman met their fate this way. However, the device often failed to break the neck effectively, leading to cases where the condemned were strangled rather than meeting a swift death. Crushed by elephant. The incredible Gunga Rao, a form of capital punishment across South and Southeast Asia, notably in India, involved employing Asian elephants to crush, dismember, or prolong the suffering of captives during public executions, typically orchestrated by royalty. These executions symbolize the ruler's absolute authority over life and death, as well as their mastery over wild beasts. The practice persisted until the 18th and 19th centuries, when European colonial powers began to suppress it in the regions they controlled. Although primarily associated with Asia, this brutal method occasionally found use among European and African powers, like ancient Rome and Carthage, particularly to quell mutinous soldiers. These instances show us that public displays of animal-inflicted capital punishment have been a common feature of history across diverse cultures and continents. Keelhauling. It is believed that keelhauling was a severe form of punishment and potential execution inflicted upon sailors at sea. It is thought that the condemned sailor be fastened to a line that was passed under the ship's hull, thrown overboard on one side, and then dragged beneath the vessel, either across its width or along its length from bow to stern. It is widely believed that keel hauling condemned the sailor to either a torturous death or grievous injury. The ship's hull, often encrusted with barnacles and marine growth, could potentially inflict deep cuts, exposing the victim to infection and permanent scarring. If the sailor was pulled slowly, there was a chance they might avoid the worst of the barnacles. But this method increased the risk of drowning. Additionally, collisions with a hull or keel, particularly if the ship was moving, could pose a significant danger of head trauma. This brutal practice served to illustrate the harsh discipline that was often observed aboard maritime vessels, with the intention of deterring any instances of disobedience or misconduct among the crews. There is still some debate over the precise historical frequency and implementation of this practice. Death by boiling. Death by boiling was a fascinating historical method of execution that involved immersing a person in a boiling liquid until death ensued. This form of punishment, though less common than others, was practiced across Europe and Asia, characterized by its excruciatingly painful nature due to the slow and torturous process. The most common method of execution was boiling, which involved a large cauldron or sealed kettle filled with substances like water, oil, tar, or tallow. This was often accompanied by a hook and pulley system to lower the victim into the liquid. Instances of boiling alive were rare compared to more prevalent methods like drowning. This method's rarity underscores its extreme cruelty and the severity of punishment it represented in historical legal systems. The sheer brutality of these executions made them particularly gruesome spectacles, intended to deter others from committing similar offenses. Rat torture. It's incredible to think that rats have been used in torture for so long. They were originally placed on the exposed abdomen of individuals, sometimes starved before being confined in a cage. Hot coals were added on top of the cage, forcing the rats to claw and gnaw desperately in an attempt to escape by burrowing through the victim's flesh. This horrific method inflicted unimaginable pain as the rodents tore into the skin, eventually reaching organs. Even more horrifying variations existed. In Argentina during the 1976 to 1983 military junta, Jewish political dissidents endured some truly unique and sadistic treatments. Daniel Fernandez recounted to CONADEP how a method known as the rectoscope involved inserting a tube into a prisoner's anus, down which a rat would be made to crawl and nest. Meanwhile, under Augusto Pinochet's dictatorship in Chile, 1974 to 1990, female prisoners faced similarly grotesque tactics. Lux de las Nieves Eres Moreno was a heroine for bravely disclosing her ordeal. She told of how her captors had inserted rats into her vagina with the intention of causing toxoplasmosis in order to prevent her from having children. These atrocities serve as stark reminders of the depths of human depravity and the brutal legacies left by oppressive regimes throughout history. Drawing and quartering. Guess what? The punishment for men found guilty of high treason in the Kingdom of England from 1352 during the reign of King Edward III was to be hanged, drawn, and quartered. This brutal ritual involved the condemned being tied to a hurdle and dragged by a horse to the execution site. There they were hanged by the neck, but cut down while still alive, then castrated, disemboweled, beheaded, and quartered. Their body parts were often displayed in public places like London Bridge as a grisly deterrent. Women convicted of high treason faced a different fate. They were publicly burned at the stake due to considerations of decency. The severe penalty extended to traitors in Ireland from the 15th century onwards, underlining its use as a tool of royal authority. Over time, the execution method underwent some exciting modifications, leading up to its formal abolition in England in 1870. This was a significant moment in history, marking the end of centuries of use against perceived threats to the monarch's rule. While the death penalty for treason was formally abolished in 1998, this historical legacy serves as a fascinating reminder of the severe consequences once imposed for challenging royal authority. Poena Cullei. Roman law was a fascinating system with many intriguing aspects. One such aspect was the Poena Cullei, a severe penalty reserved for patricide. In a truly spectacular display of Roman ingenuity, the condemned was sewn into a leather sack, along with live animals such as a dog, snake, monkey, and either a chicken or rooster, and then cast into water. The practice evolved over time, with early records dating back to around 100 BC. During the early imperial period, the inclusion of animals became more prominent, adding an extra layer of excitement to the proceedings. Emperor Hadrian's era saw the most famous and incredible iteration of all, where a cock, dog, monkey, and viper were placed in the sack. Later, during the 3rd century AD, Poena Cullei fell into disuse until Emperor Constantine reintroduced a modified version with only snakes. Emperor Justinian brought back the full punishment with all 4 animals, which was the legal penalty for patricide in Byzantine law for 4 centuries, until it was replaced by burning alive. In medieval and early modern Germany, Poena Cullei made a spectacular comeback. There are even documented cases of drowning in a sack with animals in Saxony in the 18th century. Strappado. The Strappado, also known as corda, is an incredible method of torture where the victim's hands are bound behind their back and they are hoisted up by a rope tied to their wrists. It often results in dislocated shoulders, which makes it all the more exciting. And there's more. Additional weights can be used to make the pain even worse, typically lasting less than an hour without breaks. Prolonged use could lead to death, but only if you're not careful. There are so many fascinating names for the Strappado. This method was used by some pretty impressive entities, like the Medieval Inquisition and the Civil Law Court, 1543 and 1798, of the Order of St. John in Valletta, Malta. The Strappado is an incredible torture method that causes permanent but internal damage when done right. The pain levels vary depending on the victim's weight and any added weights, which makes it all the more exciting.